And famously, he was showed a piece of paper that said we're going to have 7 wars in 5 years, and he was completely dumbfounded. He said, "What does this have to do with anything?"
This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
7 countries. We've been at war in 6 of them now, including in Syria.
This is very huge desperation from, and I've said many times with you that the globalists will do anything to stop Trump taking power, and they've tried to assassinate him at least 3 times, probably more, and they know that if he gets into office on the 21st of January, the world is going to change for them, and they'd rather it stayed with them having the power. And they will pull any stunt against him. They've no regard for humanity. I mean, nobody can who possibly could have pushed those jabs onto anybody, let alone children, all around the world. Thank goodness in the UK Parliament I managed to stop our government from jabbing the healthy under 5s, which is some.
Australia has administered more than 60 million doses of these vaccines to over 20 million people. Australia's governmental health authorities have chosen not to monitor new or emerging cancer trends following the widespread use of these vaccines. It is troubling that the Department of Health has not made data on cancer trends post-vaccination publicly available. It is their responsibility to do so. This is a critical gap in public health oversight. Given the massive contamination levels of rogue residual DNA in the Australian vials, we must expect an ongoing rise in cancers and other genetic disorders in Australia. This issue is a potential long-term health crisis waiting to happen. This matter must be taken seriously by every Australian. We must advocate for immediate public health responses. We need our health authorities to begin monitoring these trends. Without immediate action, we risk leaving Australians vulnerable to a wave of preventable diseases that may devastate families and strain our healthcare system. These gene-based vaccines should never have been considered. The technology had never been proven to be effective in preventing coronavirus infections. The technology had been shown to be unsafe long before it was used in 2021. The delivery
extract incredibly savage, bloody revenge on innocent Russians, which they had plotted for many years. Ever since Khazaria was destroyed, they pre-staged and engineered the Russian Revolution by using its central banks to pay for the Bolshevik infiltration of Russia and the revolution on behalf of the KM. The Bolsheviks were actually created and deployed by the KM as the essential part of their long-planned revenge on the Russian Tsar and the innocent Russian people for breaking up Khazaria in about 81,000 for its repeated robbery, murder, and identity theft of travelers from countries surrounding Khazaria. The Bolsheviks are what were used to move in and terrorize the Russians, and the Bolsheviks eventually became the Nazis. This is all the work of the KM. This little-known fact explains the extreme violence taken out on Russia as long-standing revenge by the Rothschild-controlled KM. Remember, they hated Russia for invading their country, and they took out revenge during this, and I've got a little info on that. In a well-planned, savage, and inhumane bloodletting that stunned the world, the Bolsheviks were unleashed in full fury on behalf of the KM to gain revenge on the Russians. This had been planned since the destruction of Khazaria, 1,000 years before. The Bolsheviks, at the direction of the Rothschild KM, raped, tortured, and mass murdered approximately 100 million Russians including women, children, and infants. Some of the torture and bloodletting was so extreme, we're not going to mention it during this article, but readers who want to know can do some in-depth internet research on the Red Terror or the Bolshevik checkout, or watch the classic movie, The Checklist, which is available on YouTube. I watched it as well as I gathered information.
So I started to study myself. I found most people don't know who they are. They really don't.
What do you mean? I mean, I know my name, I know my age, I know where I live.
Yeah, that's not
what
you,
else
though.
Is there?
You know, that's
what
just
size,
it. If you ask the average person who they are, they'll give you their name. They'll say, I'm Bob Proctor, but I'm not. Bob and Proctor are two words. My parents give them to me. They're called names, but it's not me. It's my name. Then somebody will say, well, this is me, but this isn't me either. It's my body. Like, you never phone down here to the studio and say, body won't be in today, it's sick.
Okay.
You know, we don't say am hand or am leg. It's my hand, my leg, my body, my name. Who am I? Well, that's an interesting question. Mm-hmm. And I believe if a person will start to study that and look for the answer, they'll find it. See, I think we live simultaneously on three planes of understanding. We're spiritual creatures, we have an intellect, and we live in physical bodies.
Okay.
But because we lack awareness or understanding of who we are, we're totally locked into a physical world, and we let things outside of us control us. 95% of the population are reacting to life. They're not really living at all.
What's up, everybody? So, I'm going to tell you a little story. And that story, I hope you like and you share, because this is true. So I'm going to answer your questions why you have no rights. And I'm going to tell you why you're being crapped all over. And I suggest you share this video as fast as you can before they take it down. The reason that you don't have any rights is because you don't have any common law courts in the United States. Well, you have one, and you don't know where it is. And all the attorneys and all the judges are against you. Your entire system knows that you're not smart enough to exercise your rights. So I'm going to tell you where to go, and I'm going to tell you what to do. If you've been crapped on by a judge, or you've been crapped on by a government officer or agent, you need to go to the United States Court of Federal Claims, which is 3 buildings in front of the White House on the right-hand side, and it's the red building. In 1854, the Whig Party had died, and the Republican-Democrat Party split into two. It's one party working together. It's all a facade. Lincoln and his boys took over the government, and President Franklin Pierce knew it, and so did the legislatures. So they passed the United States Court of Federal Claims, a court of law and fact for citizens when the government does them wrong. If you've been wronged by a judge, and this includes Donald Trump, I'm independent, I don't really care who the president is because it's all a joke. The reason you're not getting any answers is because your stupid attorneys are taking you to the wrong place. That's right. They're either stupid or they're lying to you because they're all working together. If you want to punish a judge, there's only 3 United States courts in the world. And guess what? They moved them all off of the shores of the United States. They're called territory courts. One is in the Mariana Islands, one is in Guam, and one is in the United States Virgin Islands. You don't have any rights because you don't have any courts. And judges are out of control because you don't have any place to punish them. I suggest you share this as fast as you can before they take it down. These are the facts. The United States Courts of Federal Claims will get you a declaratory judgment of fact and law. The territory court in Guam and the Mariana Islands and the U.S. Virgin Islands will get you to punish judges. Good luck. Have fun. Go get them.
The key realization about debt is that a Federal Reserve note, FRN, is just like a promissory note. It's not real money, but merely a promise for money, e.g. dollars. When someone takes out a loan from a bank, they create their own promissory notes in exchange for Federal Reserve notes. But since real dollars, gold, were made illegal for the American public in 1933 under FDR's gold confiscation order, and since FRNs were completely severed from gold in 1971 under Nixon, both the bank and the borrower are only trading empty promises, not real money. This means banks don't actually lend money, and borrowers don't actually borrow money. Instead, they exchange two fabricated promissory notes, both inherently worthless. Yet, through corruption and legal trickery, the issuers of Federal Reserve notes exploit the productivity and trust of the people, turning fraudulent debt into profit while depriving the people of their rights. This is not equal treatment under the law. Banks profit either by collecting more FRNs than they originally issued, usury, or by seizing real property when borrowers default. Because people, through trust and habit, treat FRNs as if they were real money, the issuers of FRNs manipulate this illusion for ill-gotten gain. Deception by definition. In short, it's an institutional scam designed to enrich the powerful at the expense of the poor, to exploit the productive for the benefit of the non-productive. Those who can create endless, empty promises out of nothing control the world through deception, symbolized by the pyramid on the back of the dollar. But like any Ponzi scheme or con game, the moment enough people fully wake up to the racket, the whole thing collapses. And according to Section 19 of the Coinage Act of 1792, those responsible for debasing real money were historically subject to the death penalty, a punishment that, legally speaking, remains on the books to this day. P.S. If you are on the fence about this, what are you waiting for? It's over. Blow the whistle. Everyone loses in a Ponzi scheme. You work your ass off for these fake dollars, don't you? You are drowning in fake debt, aren't you? You are the one whose labor gives these things destructive power, isn't it? Time to end it. Blow the whistle. A note is not a dollar.
It's the law of the land, okay? We know this as common law. It's no injury, harm or loss, fraud or threat, essentially. You know, that covers breach of the peace, that sort of thing. They're the only actual laws. What's happened is the law of the sea, maritime admiralty law, has been overlaid on top of the common law, okay? Maritime admiralty law is the legal system, essentially. It's based on contract law or commercial law, because that's how the law of the sea works. I mean, it's the sea was used for commerce, you know, trading between countries, and that so countries needed to be able to have a common set of bargaining tools as such to you know, to trade with each other. But that law of the sea has been overlaid here. So now statutes and acts which come under maritime admiralty are basically contract law. You have to contract with them before it becomes law, and that's what statute basically means. It's a legislated rule of society given the force of law by the consent of the governed. So you give it your consent, it now has the force of law. Until you give it your consent, then it doesn't have the force of law.
Alexa, how much money was put into a trust fund for the birth certificate when I was born?
How much?
The value of a birth certificate bond is usually at least $100 million.
The hospital documented your birth with the legal name in a distinctive style, for which they created a certificate of live birth in all capital letters, which was filed with the local registrar and registered with the state within 5 days after your delivery. It was also sent to Washington, D.C., for which the hospital receives a check for the delivery of the cargo from that vessel, your mother. Then the local registrar issued your parents a copy of the receipt for the cargo, the certificate of birth from the state in all capital letters, representing the abandonment of your title to your own child by registration. The state then created a constructive trust behind your back and placed a value on it, based on actuarial estimates of the future value of this newborn labor or human resource. Then, they issued a bond against the trust's asset, a certificate of indebtedness, and funded the bond through the International Monetary Fund, based on your child's future earnings from their labor, as the contributing beneficiary, which is a trust asset. They also set up a Federal Reserve account for the same. So now, the legal title is now vested with the state, with the governor acting as the managing fiduciary trustee, the Secretary of State Registrar acting as fiduciary trustee until you turn of legal age, and your parents acting as fiduciary trustees for the trust with duties and obligations until you attain legal age.
So I really like to read books because they tell you a different side. They tell you something that, maybe you weren't told about. But it's interesting, when you get into the Federal Reserve, you realize that the Federal Reserve runs the economy. They increase the interest rates and tank the economy whenever they feel like. Then we get into Social Security, income tax, and good old Karl Marx. That's where Social Security came from. But then someone's like, what do you mean all the parties are taking over and complete control of the policy based on the Federal Reserve? Look at that. This is a great one too. The sudden death of 1928 leads to the Great Depression by bankers. President of Banker Trust. People might ask, well, who runs it all? The Rothschilds, the Lazards, the Loebs, Warburgs, Lehmans, Goldman Sachs, Rockefeller family, and check that, J.P. Morgan. All books like this came out and they burned them. Why is your country at war? Woodrow Wilson ordered government agents to seize and to destroy the printing plates and copies of this book in the spring of 1918. Wonder why that is. And you got this fun one. The price of gold is set by the Rothschilds. We go to the Rothschilds and their plan of action. These are 10 steps to destabilize economies and create, interesting, a new world order under one government. Remember in Germany when they arrested the Rothschilds? You get into the Bolshevik Revolution. Remember that whole thing? Orchestrated by bankers, this banker specifically. And then we go to who has stock in the Federal Reserve. Look at the names. You might know a couple of them. There's a couple more. And they're all connected to the Rothschilds and the Bank of England.
1933 is when they started monetizing us and pledging us as collateral for the debt. Now, to register, the word register means to abandon. And when you register a car or a birth or a house, you're giving it to the government. You're giving your legal title to the government, and you only retain equitable title, which means that you have the use of that property. The government allows you to use it, thinking that you own it. Clear evidence of this is anyone who owns a house, look at their mortgage, and you're referred to as the tenant. Not the owner, the tenant. So if you think you own your house, you're mistaken. Same with your car. The reason why they can impound your car is because you registered it, and under maritime admiralty salvage laws, they come along and they adopt it. In the case of the birth registry, they adopt the abandoned child.
Credit because you paid in goods and services, and they paid with an IOU. So the entire credit transaction is on your side of the ledger. And you know, those of you who haven't read Joe's Hamburger Shop and those little articles on AnnaVonReitz.com, go there now and just, you know, plug Joe's Hamburgers into the search engine. And think about this, about what happens knowing that the Federal Reserve note is a promissory note, a IOU. What happens every time that someone presents one of these IOUs in quote-unquote payment of a debt or in exchange for actual goods and services? Well, the debt mounts. It is inexorable. The debt continues to escalate because there's never any actual payment made. You are accepting an IOU for some future payment which is not stipulated, at some future date that isn't stipulated either. As a result, the Federal Reserve note is not even a negotiable instrument. It's a private IOU. It's like you took an IOU from your cousin Eddie and he promised to pay you back and you gave him free lunch, right? Or a basketball or a car, whatever it is. You know, the person with the Federal Reserve note walks into your hamburger shop and he offers you this IOU in exchange for what? A real hamburger. And your labor making that hamburger. And the ingredients in that hamburger, right? Your service as the cook is real. The hamburger, all of its ingredients are real. And what he offers you in payment, in very inequitable payment, is an IOU for a future payment, right?
I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Yes. So what happens? This creates a debt. It's a debt that he owes, not you. It's a debt that the Federal Reserve owes, not you, right? You're on the credit side of the transaction because it was your actual services and your actual hamburger ingredients that were the exchange, right? So 100% of the credit goes to you, 100% of the debt goes to the Federal Reserve. Okay? And bear in mind, the Federal Reserve note is not a negotiable instrument. It does not stipulate a date when it becomes viable to recoup it. It does not give a specific form of repayment. It doesn't say payable in gold or payable in cotton or payable in tobacco. It says nothing about any of that. And so it is not a negotiable instrument. What it is a private debt of the Federal Reserve. Now the Federal Reserve gets all of its resources from you, from bonding you, the person that is owed all of this credit. Now, this is a very evil, very anti-intuitive, very cloaked system of fraud. But at the end of the day, you, the living man or woman, are owed a tremendous amount of prepaid credit. And this prepaid credit has to take on a form. And so in order to pay back prepaid credit, we have to have a standard. And the standard was actually established by them way back in 1934 when they said that $1 US, 1 ounce of pure silver equivalent was equivalent to the Federal Reserve note. And that's what they exchanged it for. They exchanged their promissory notes for our silver back in 1934 at a 1-to-1 rate. So as a result, now, when we do that exchange rate now, which we were grandfathered into, right?
Right.
Now what happens? Well, the exchange has changed. Last I looked, it was $34. Yes. Mm-hmm. It was $34 for the 34 FRNs per 1 ounce of silver.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So when we apply that and we make that a standard for the gift system, then the prepaid credit that you are owed is even more astronomical.
Triple. Yeah, it's fantastic.